Hey everybody, welcome to Beyond the Horizon. My name is Bobby, and today I'm going to tell you about the second to last hanging of the American West. So let's go. So let's get started. All right everybody, so for my first video, I wanted to bring you all to a place that I've always found very fascinating. It's called the Santa Rosa Rural Cemetery. Santa Rosa Rural Cemetery was established in 1854 when they needed they needed a place to start putting bodies as the population grew. And we'll get into some of the people who lay here in a future video. This is a 17-acre cemetery that includes multiple cemeteries. But today I want to share with you my favorite story from this cemetery. And it's actually something that happened in the cemetery. We will go to a couple graves today that pertain to the story. But the main focus on today is what happened, as I said, within the cemetery. So we'll start back in the fall of 1920. There was a gang in San Francisco. They raised a lot of havoc, and they assaulted a couple of girls, along with a bunch of other things that they were doing, just terrorizing people, terrorizing the area. And after they assaulted these girls, they came to Santa Rosa. They hopped a train and came here to Santa Rosa. We're by the old railroad depot. And one of the guys we're going to talk about today, his name was Terry Fitz. And Terry Fitz was from Santa Rosa. And it's unclear whether he was part of this gang or if he was just an associate. But he pretty much brought the boys here, and three of them, Terry Fitz, George Boyd, and Charles Valento, hid out in a house right by the railroad depot, trying to hide from the law. And they were there for a while before the law got word that they were there. At that point, Sonoma County Sheriff James Petrie, Sonny Jim is what they called him, or Honest Jim, good guy, well liked by the community, but he was as I said, the Sonoma County Sheriff, and he, along with a couple of San Francisco detectives, went to this house where Terry Fitz, George Boyd, and Charles Valento were hiding out to confront them and to arrest them. He got in there, and as one of the officers was making an arrest near the bathroom of the house, all hell broke loose. And George Boyd, who was sitting on the couch talking to Jim Petrie, the sheriff, and one of the officers, one of the detectives that was with him, started shooting. And right away, Jim Petrie was killed. He was shot in the head. And then he killed Lester Dorman, who was one of the detectives there helping to make the arrest. At that point, he shot the third man, Miles Jackson. And Miles got a shot off of his own, hit George Boyd. Didn't kill him, but wounded him pretty good, enough to slow these guys down and give the other officers that were waiting outside time to arrest these 3 outlaws. So they took him to jail. That was December 5th, 1920. I'll let these people walk by real quick because they don't want to be on camera. Hello. So as I said, that was December 5th, 1920, when the 3 officers were killed: Jim Petrie, Lester Dorman, Miles Jackson. And the outlaws were apprehended, taken to the jail. Well, a few days passed, and some friends of Jim Petrie's, who is from Healdsburg, just north of here, got together and decided they weren't going to leave it to chance for these 3 outlaws not to be punished, or for justice not to be fulfilled, or they didn't want the trial being dragged out for the family's sake and for their sake as friends of Jim Petrie's. So they decided to go to the jail in the middle of the night on December 10th, 1920, and to break these men out of jail and to do what they wanted with them. So they went in there, bandanas on, with guns. There were about 30 of them. And they took these men from the jail, tied them up, brought them here to where I stand right now, specifically the spot in front of me, about 10 feet in front of me here. And there was a tree here. There was a locust tree here. And in the middle of the night, the cars lined up on McDonald Avenue, where you see these cars going by. Wasn't all this stuff built here yet, but cars lined up with their headlights facing this way. And they strung these men up from this locust tree. I'm gonna walk out here a little bit. So this is the there are a lot of veterans from several wars buried in this cemetery. About 268 veterans total, including 183 from the Civil War. So this here is the war memorial. You see the exact replica cannon there, and these cannonballs all around. And this was to pay tribute to all the veterans buried here in the cemetery. So anyway, right where I point my camera, right beyond that light pole there, that's where that tree stood. And in pictures you can actually see this monument next to me, and you can see the tree just off to the left of the monument, behind those cannonballs there. And they took those pictures later on, but that's where the tree stood, where those men were hung, however you want to call it. That tree you see right there is said to be a sprout from that original tree. So not sure if it is or not. That's what they claim. That tree, the original tree where the men were strung up, was taken down within about a year after the incident, because it was considered to be the second to last hanging of the American West. So pretty interesting. As an Old West buff myself, I think it's so cool that just down the street from my house, this happened. Yeah, some people call it the end of the Old West era. Some people call it the beginning of the kind of gangster era, you know, Bonnie and Clyde, all that stuff. But in either case, this is where it happened, guys. And they didn't know too much else about the incident until 1989. A man came forward. His name was Clarence. They called him Barney Bernard. And Barney decided to do an interview with the local newspaper here. And he wanted, at that point, he was almost 90 years old already. So he wanted to, probably didn't know how much time he had left. He wanted to make his confession and tell what happened that night. And what he said was that they got together. It was planned by their captain for this vigilante mob. He planned it out. He had everything just planned out perfectly to go and get these men out of the jail on the night of December 10th of 1920. And to bring them here, to string them up. He said that they got there to the jail. He said some of the details I found pretty interesting were, he was talking about how they got to the jail, and through the bars, Barney told the outlaws, "You're gonna pay for what you did." And he said they didn't really say much. They just, their eyes got about as big as saucers. So at that point, they had bandanas, guns. The mob did, vigilante mob, and the deputies there really had nothing to. They didn't, try to deter these men or anything. They said, "Here's the keys. Do whatever you got to do." So that's what they did. They took him out of there, brought him here, and they took a blood oath that none of them would ever talk about it. Well, even though Barney talked about it, he was the second to last one still standing back in 1989 when he made this, when he gave this interview, and probably wasn't sure how much time he had left. So he told the reporter this interview was not to be released until the day after he died. Well, Barney couldn't have known it, but he ended up living until 2008 at the age of 108, because he was born in, I believe, August of 1899, and he made it all the way until January 2008. So yeah, he was 108 years old, and pretty interesting, guys. Pretty interesting story. And I'm gonna take you to the next spot. Just met a nice man, came down this road. He takes care of the cemetery here, and he saw my bucket of blood sweatshirt from Virginia City. So we got to talking about Virginia City and Fort Churchill and all the area around there. A lot of great history. So anyway, was just telling him that I'm signed up to help take care of the cemetery when I can. So look forward to coming back and doing what I can. So right now, I'm taking you guys to a different part of the cemetery called the Moke section of the cemetery. It was originally purchased by an undertaker back in late 1800s, early 1900s. And why that's important to this story here that we're doing today is that after Terry Fitz, George Boyd, and George Vigilante were killed, they left the bodies swinging on the trees, on the tree. And when they were cut down, the family of Terry Fitz, being locals, and they were pretty well respected. His father, I believed, worked in the lumber industry back then and was a well-respected member of the community. Even though his son was a lifelong criminal and kind of sort of tarnished the family name a little bit. But anyway, after the men were cut down and taken to the coroner, the family wanted a hasty burial of Terry Fitz, in fear that the community, knowing what these men had done, would try to desecrate the graves, dig them up, do something bad to the body of Terry Fitz. So it was a hasty burial, even though that was the story that came out right away, is that they were buried hastily. And then to kind of deter people from looking for the grave of Terry Fitz, the coroner said, "Oh no, they're still there. They're still there at the mortuary. Haven't been buried. We're not going to say where they're going to be buried." But the report was that Terry Fitz was buried in the Moak section of the cemetery, and that George Boyd, the one that actually pulled the trigger and killed James Petrie and Lester Dorman, Miles Jackson, was buried with him in an unmarked grave. Both graves originally, I guess, were unmarked. And then, through some research that I've done, found that Terry Fitz, as I said, was buried in the Moak section. George Boyd was buried in the Moak section. And turns out they were most likely buried in the same plot. So that's where we're going right now. And this grave, as you'll see, faces away from the road. The tree where we were before is over the hill over there, back that way, and the road right next to it. And they buried him far away from the road so people wouldn't be so tempted to stop and do anything. But again, through research, here we are. Get close, and you see the initials TJF. Terrence Joseph Fitz. So how do we know that this stone here is Terry Fitz? Well, a couple reasons. Let's get to it. As I showed you a minute ago, TJF, Terrence Joseph Fitz. Well, Terry Fitz fought in the Spanish-American War. And that's how we know, based on his enlistment, that his name was Terrence Joseph Fitz. And as you can see, 1920 right there. So he was buried away from the road. This stone with the initials TJF, his father is buried that way in the Oddfellows Cemetery, where Robert Ripley is also buried, from Ripley's Believe It or Not. So his father, though, Terrence Fitz's father, has the same stone with just his initials on it. And so eventually put this stone here, probably not too long after, I would guess. It's a pretty, this stone's seen better days for sure. But again, George Boyd, the trigger man, is said to be buried right here. As you can see, this plot, sorry for the shaky camera work, this plot is big enough for 2 bodies. And the one historian that I know of, who is also familiar with the story, claimed that George Boyd was unclaimed. You know, it was a pretty pretty nasty deal. You know, people just kind of wanted to forget about these guys. You know, and Terry Fitz, being a local here in Santa Rosa, was claimed by his father, and I'm sure as ashamed as his father was, you know, it was still his son, so he claimed him. George Boyd wasn't so lucky. Nobody came back for this guy. And I think at that point, they just pretty much said, go ahead and throw him in there. You know, probably gave him the cheapest box possible and toss him in the same plot here. So anyway, Terry Fitz, kind of the, if you want to call him the ringleader, he was a life of crime, you know, career criminal. He was 40 years old or so when he died, but he'd been in and out of prison for most of his life. After he got out of the, well, actually before he went into the Army and after he got out. So now that we've seen where the incident happened, the hanging tree, or where the hanging tree once stood, and then we visited the kind of little known graves of Terry Fitz and George Boyd. Charles Valento, I'm not sure where he ended up. I believe his family did come back and claim him, so that's kind of been lost to history a little bit. Maybe one day I'll find where he is. But anyway, Terry Fitz and George Boyd here. You know, this is their final resting spot, and maybe other than myself and maybe people that care about the history of this place, no, but you know, I mean, other than a few of us that come here and want to talk about the history, I think it's pretty much been forgotten. But anyway, got one more place that I want to take you guys to conclude this video. Hey again, everybody. We made it to our final destination for the day. Here in Healdsburg, California. I'm at the grave of Barney Bernard, the man who made that admission back in 1989 that he and his father and a bunch of friends of Sheriff Petrie were there for the hanging of the 3 outlaws. So we're here at Barney Bernard's grave. Here you go. So here he is, Barney Bernard. He's the one that made the confession. That audio recording with the reporter back in 1989. No way he could have known that he'd live almost another 20 years and die at 108 years old. So here he is, Mr. Bernard. He and his father and some other friends of Sheriff Petrie, you know, they did what they thought was right. Took those outlaws out of the jail and to the cemetery and strung them up. So, you know what? No judgment here. That's all I'm going to say about that. But they did what they thought was right for their friend and for the family and the community. So anyway, here he is, and there's his son right above him here, Clarence H. Bernard Jr. He was in the Army in Korea, so thank you for your service, sir. And Mr. Bernard, what a life. Long life and big secret. And hey, blood oath. They kept it until all were gone except for him and one other guy. You know, one other friend of his who was 6 months older than him, and was already on his, unfortunately, on his way out when Mr. Bernard made that confession. So anyway, here he is, and we have one more spot to see before we leave today. Guys, we're making our approach to the final stop of the day. The man this video is about, here he is, Sheriff Jim Petrie, Sonny Jim, that's what they called him. Man. He was 55 years old when he was killed by Boyd, Fitz, and Vigilante. Man, terrible loss for the community. I mean, when you've got 30 friends that want vengeance for your death, I mean, I'd say that's some respect right there. Mr. Petrie, hope you rest in peace. And I'm sorry for you and your family, what you all went through back then. So hopefully you're all back together. It's Harriet and his wife. Ransom of Leah's son. And Lydia, his daughter, left behind a wife and 2 children. God bless. Well, everybody, that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. I feel like it's an important part of history that doesn't get remembered too much anymore. But thought it was important to document it. So thanks again. Hope you like and subscribe, and follow me on the next one. And until next time, know your history. The future depends on it.